Adapting a popular video game for television is pretty difficult. At least, that's what we're led to believe in the aftermath of such spectacular turds as Halo, The Witcher, Resident Evil, and those are all just in the last couple years. There's a long and storied history of movie and TV show game adaptations flopping with flying colors. But in reality, adapting a well-renowned video game to the screen, big or little, isn't nearly as hard as modern film studios make it look. Sticking to the story laid out in the games, or even just the spirit of the world so meticulously built by the original creators and faithfully bringing iconic characters to life, is simply a bridge too far for Hollywood apparently. Why just bring the magic of the games to the big screen when we can gut the franchise, shape it in our own image, and walk around in a grotesque skin suit attacking the fans that made the franchise popular in the first place? I mean, how else would they be able to use a brand from the inside to go after those troublesome gamers they so openly loathe? A fair amount of the blame for these failures lies with the studio's profit models as well, sure, as they assume that with a built-in fan base already and eager to buy tickets or shell out for a subscription, they can cut some corners during production. But you're not going to convince me that making Jaskier gay or making Albert Wesker black was done in an effort to save on costs. There are other forces at play here. But with so many flops and bastardizations of legendary game stories littering the Hollywood trash heap, we have to appreciate those rare occasions when they get it right. And with Fallout, they actually kinda nailed it. From masterfully bringing a unique game world to life, to developing a genuinely interesting story that stands apart from those of the games, Fallout shows us what a TV game adaptation can be in the right hands. The story grips you from the first scene and keeps you intrigued all the way through to the final shot that teases where we're headed for Season 2. The world of Fallout is alive and completely drenched in the signature 1950s false joviality, with characters being overly polite and propaganda being darkly optimistic. The characters actually change in between the first scene and the last, hardened by a new world or having had their dreams shattered by reality or new obligations. Imagine that! Character development! I've watched so much Halo over the last few months that I almost forgot what character development looked like. And all this is packaged up in a genuine love letter to the fans, rather than trying to use a highly regarded franchise to sell their own sci-fi story, or blast unwitting viewers with their particular worldview. For the uninitiated, the best description of the world of Fallout I've seen is that it's an atom-punk, retro-futuristic, post-apocalyptic nuclear wasteland. The game series originated in 1997 and has 10 game entries in the mainline series and in the form of spin-offs, with the most recent releasing in 2018. The core idea is that select members of society were granted entry or bought their way into secure underground vaults to ride out the nuclear apocalypse, intent on re-emerging on Reclamation Day when they would return to the surface and rebuild American society. But unbeknownst to the residents, these vaults were all designed to conduct horrific social experiments on them. Some vaults would be designed to open too early, some were designed so the door wouldn't fully close, some were designed to never allow the door to open. One had 1,000 men and 1 woman, one had 1,000 women and 1 man.
Nice.
And one locked away 1 man with just a crate of puppets to keep him company. Some had an abundance of food but no water, an abundance of water but no food. Some were designed to have simple mechanical failures just to stress the residents out. And yet others conducted horrifying science experiments on the vault dwellers, mutating them into unrecognizable monsters. The list goes on, ranging from the benign to the truly horrific and twisted. Very few vaults had no experiments lined up, so they could establish control groups. For most vault dwellers, however, their supposedly safe lives underground were just as treacherous as life on the surface. Every game in the main series, however, eventually deals with life outside the vault, and what humanity has had to become in order to survive the wasteland above. And the Fallout TV show takes place at the end of the official Fallout timeline, setting it up to move the story forward and forge new canon. Now, we'll get into the particulars on just how Fallout managed to impress us after we get in a quick recap of the story. This is where the spoilers are going to start, but if you don't want the story spoiled, use the chapter markers below to jump ahead to the review portion of the video, which will be free of any major spoilers. So here's your official canon spoiler warning. Fallout begins in 2077, where instead of the world of Cyberpunk 2077, America is still living out the golden years of the 1950s. Cooper Howard, a Western film star working a children's birthday party, gets a front row seat to the end of the world as Los Angeles is annihilated by nukes. Fast forward to the year 2296, and some of humanity lives on in Vault 33, deep underground and safe from the irradiated wasteland above. Our protagonist Lucy lives down here with her brother and her father, the Vault Overseer, where everyone is happy and healthy and fucking polite. When raiders attack their vault, Lucy's dad is taken hostage, and his captor, a woman named Moldaver, hints that Lucy's father is not quite who he appears to be. They head to the surface with her father in tow, and Lucy travels to the surface alone, determined to get her father back and willing to brave a new world that she's woefully unprepared for. Meanwhile, we meet Maximus, a member of the Brotherhood of Steel, an organization of zealots dedicated to the reclamation of lost technology, and the Ghoul, the same cowboy western movie star from before the bombs dropped, now turned irradiated bounty hunter. Both of them are on the hunt for a scientist from the Enclave that's gone AWOL with a critical piece of technology. But Lucy comes across the scientist first and comes into possession of this mysterious tech, and thus inevitably has run-ins with the Ghoul that are pretty rough, and run-ins with Maximus, which both of them quite enjoy, and she's forced to learn how to adapt to life on the surface. Meanwhile, back in Vault 33, Lucy's brother Norm uncovers the truth that all the previous overseers of their vault have actually come from the secretive Vault 31, including his and Lucy's father. Through flashbacks of Cooper's life before he was a ghoul, we learn the sinister truth that the builders of the vaults, Vault-Tec, along with several other corporations that lived long past the Great War, are the ones who dropped the first bombs. In the present day, Lucy tracks down Moldaver and her father with Maximus's help, where she learns that her father was a Vault-Tec manager frozen in Vault 31, waiting for his turn to be unthawed to help manage the repopulation of the New World, in Vault-Tec's image, of course. It also turns out that Lucy's mother is alive, but as a ghoul, and her dad is the one who nuked Moldaver's old settlement, Shady Sands. So, not a good couple of minutes for Lucy's dad. The mysterious piece of tech we find out is cold fusion technology, an infinite source of power that Moldaver, as the leader of the new California Republic, intends to use to fuel the rebuilding of Shady Sands. But the Brotherhood of Steel shows up and a pitched battle ensues. The Ghoul also shows up, now in search of information on where his family is, something Lucy's dad knows. Maximus releases Lucy's father, unaware of his brand new villain status, and her dad in turn steals Maximus's power armor and escapes when the Ghoul confronts him. Lucy sets off with the Ghoul to go after her dad, leaving a wounded Maximus behind with the Brotherhood. In the last scene, we see Lucy's dad, clad in power armor, looking down at New Vegas, and the first season comes to an end. Well, that was not nearly as brief a recap as I would have liked. And while that might not bode well for this video, it's a testament to just how much was going on in this first season. We had 8 episodes, each roughly an hour long, and you're never really bored for any of it. And there's hardly anything at all in the way of filler. Take notes, Disney Star Wars. There's a decent amount of good action throughout the season, and the payoff of the big battle at the end was great, and visually satisfying to boot. From beginning to end, the Fallout story keeps you hooked in for the ride, and you're genuinely curious about what the hell is going on with Vault 32, why Lucy's dad was taken, and what keeps the Ghoul going after all these years. But where this show really excels is in how it brought the universe of the Fallout games to life. The show is packed to the gills with Easter eggs and iconic items and references to the game stories. You have the badass power armor, specific weapons from the game, you've got dog meat, you have nearly every single faction represented from Vault Dwellers to Ghouls to Wastelanders to the NCR to the Brotherhood of Steel. You have a character going after their dad who left the vault like in Fallout 3. You have dog meat being found at a Red Rocket gas station like in Fallout 4. And you have a broken water chip threatening life in the vault like in Fallout 1.
War never changes.
War never changes.
This show had Yaoguai and rad roaches and all kinds of mutated monsters, Nuka-Cola, and just about every single reference you can think of. Even the Overseer's access code was the original release date of that first game back in 1997. But going deeper than this surface level, the Fallout show managed to capture the spirit of the game world in a way that so many other adaptations fail to. The Fallout world is cruel and brutal and darkly comedic, and this show just nails that. People are killed or maimed left and right in gory, hilarious ways. Characters are captured and sent off for organ harvesting. The water itself is laden with radiation, just waiting to kill you or turn you into a ghoul. The Fallout show doesn't pull any punches, and the stark contrast between the polite, retro demeanor of the Vault Dwellers and the brutal reality of the surface world makes for a captivating experience. Every set and costume and prop looked incredible and looked straight out of the Fallout universe, which has its own distinct look and feel. The Brotherhood power armor looked much better than anticipated, and we see a lot more of it in action than I expected as well. It's just hard to overstate it. In terms of the look and feel, from the Pip-Boys to the music, Fallout hit all the right notes in bringing the game world to life. And a significant part of doing that was getting the humor right, which the show mostly does. It can be overly silly at times, but the show generally does a good job in not just working in humorous scenes, but specifically incorporating Fallout's distinct brand of humor. They even threw in this hilarious shot of what Hollywood would look like if you took out all the communists. And the last aspect that really stood out to us were the characters. It's probably more of an indictment of the average quality of the crap TV shows and movies churned out these days, but it was refreshing to see characters actually go through full character arcs. You know, characters that, by the end, are drastically different people than they were at the start. People who learned from their experiences, who are left with different outlooks, different goals, and who would make different decisions than they would have 8 episodes earlier. Throughout the first season, Lucy goes through hell. She leaves the sheltered comfort of the only home she ever knew and is thrust into
a whole new world. I'm simply going to harvest your organs.
Lucy's naivete and trusting nature, when contrasted with a bleak, unforgiving world, sets the stage for her to adapt or die, quickly and brutally. She gets stabbed, she gets captured, she gets drugged, she gets tortured, she even loses a finger. She's hardened by the world around her, and she starts to act and think differently as she looks behind her at an old life that's well and truly gone. But in the end, Lucy does adapt, she does survive, yet she also finds a way to stay true to herself and who she thinks she really is as she prepares to forge on ahead in this wasteland. Maximus, on the other hand, is no stranger to the wasteland. But when he's faced with the reality that his future with the Brotherhood of Steel is not all it's cracked up to be, and he gets a taste of life in a vault, everything he's dreamed about since he was a kid is called into question. The season ends with him caught between the prominent position with the Brotherhood he's long coveted and wanting to follow his heart and Lucy. And then there's the Ghoul, who just brought the cool factor to the show. The contemporary events of this season don't have too much of an effect on the bounty hunter, but his character development is revealed to us via flashbacks from before the bombs dropped. His happy family is torn apart by his wife's work with Vault Tech, yet today, 220 years later, and just a shell of his former self, he's still searching for his family. All 3 of these central characters undergo compelling journeys that test their faith in humanity, their resolve to survive, and their belief in themselves. A faithful portrayal of the game world, an interesting story, and actual characters that aren't just wooden cutouts. We're lucky to get just one of those things in adaptations these days, and Fallout delivers all 3. And for all of those reasons, we're saying that Fallout is a great watch and worth your time. Now, the show is not perfect. It's not all Nuka-Cola and irradiated roses. The sexual scenes and discussions can be pretty off-putting, not all of the humor lands, some of the coincidences are a little too coincidental, but in our view, it's nothing that wasn't present in the games first. In Fallout 2, for example, you play as a woman named Mira who lived on the surface, and you can pretty much hoe yourself out around the entire wasteland, so something like the laissez-faire attitude towards sex isn't unique to the show. And for the hardcore game fans, there's a few core differences in how the show treated the Shady Sands settlement and the NCR that might rub them the wrong way. But in our view, these are little more than nitpicks and won't impact the ability to enjoy the show for 95% of viewers. The Fallout show ran the gamut on addressing a lot of the themes present in the games. You had a deep look at life in the vault, someone coming to the surface for the first time, experiencing the ruthless wasteland, exploration of the vault experiments and its effect on the residents, the Brotherhood of Steel, mutated monsters, hostile surface dwellers, factions vying for control of the future, the secret of sinister intentions of Vault Tech. It hit on almost every underlying theme fans would want to see in a Fallout show. Really, the only things I would have wanted to see that weren't included were some interaction with a malevolent AI like the Master from Fallout 1, or more references to the FEV virus present in most games. The parallels between Fallout and The Last of Us are many. Both deal with how humanity tries to survive after the apocalypse. And while we think that The Last of Us did a tremendous job in adapting the source material and bringing the game world to life, in our opinion, Fallout is at least on par with The Last of Us in that regard, and arguably faced a more daunting task in doing so. While The Last of Us is very grounded in our real world, Fallout features a much more unique setting that requires a lot of attention to detail, and the creators were up to the task with this show. And while The Last of Us was a great character-driven story, we felt that Fallout actually had more of an entertainment factor to it, and thus we probably enjoyed it a bit more than The Last of Us. I'd be remiss not to take a moment and recognize my own bias in reviewing this show, after I spent the better part of the last 2 weeks binging my way through all the major Fallout games. So very few references escaped my notice, and I was well acquainted with the world of Fallout going into the show. Therefore, naturally, I could be more impressed with this show than the average viewer who doesn't have the same background going into things, so your experience may vary. You'll just have to decide for yourself. With that potential bias noted, we're still confident in saying that Fallout masterfully brought its unique game world to life. It delivered a truly intriguing story without simply recreating a story that's already been told in the games, and it took us along for the ride as we followed the harrowing, compelling journeys of its core characters. What did you think about this Fallout show? Were you familiar with the games and their stories beforehand? If you worked for Vault-Tec and got to design your own experiment to run on the unwitting residents of a vault, what would you subject them to? Let us know in the comments below. Remember to leave a like on the video if you liked it, and consider subscribing to HateWatchers for reviews of other current shows and movies. Thank you for journeying to the surface with us today, and we'll catch you on the next one.